Hello, Christine here, and I am actually interviewing Carlos Cervantes. He is actually the regional operations manager for GoStaff. So we're going to dive in deep into what's going on with COVID-19, how that's affecting not just employers, but employees and staffing. So really excited to have him on, especially because he's been at GoStaff for 14 years. So he knows this industry really well. So Carlos, thanks for coming on today for the interview. I really appreciate it.
Happy to be here and happy to share what we've been doing on our end.
Perfect. So let's start with, your position. Like, what are the things you're handling on a day-to-day basis? Who do you interface with?
Overseeing multiple branches throughout Southern California, our LA branch, our Anaheim branch, and our San Diego branch. Managers, recruiters, account managers, who are our sales force on a day-to-day basis, trying to stay ahead of. Our goal is to implement certain recommendations before they're required, so we can be ahead of it. It's good to know if you need a work certification card, because now there's a mandate by the city that says you can't be out without one, that you're covered. We are already ahead of it. It's ready to go. All our staff has one. It's just one small example. But yeah, making sure that we're in the forefront of this all, and that our teams across Southern California are prepared to be able to guide our employees and our clients through this. Everything's changing so quickly. You gotta be good on your toes to be able to adapt and roll things as fast as possible.
No, and it's changing by the minute. I know that, construction is still considered an essential business right now in California. But I know you guys are just, again, trying to get ahead of it, because you want to make sure everybody's in compliance on the job sites, like the subs, everybody, because the last thing we want is construction to be shut down in California. There's Los Angeles just recently made a rule where they need to have a COVID supervisor on every job site.
It's through the Los Angeles Department of Building Safety. And yes, they're calling it a designated onsite COVID supervisor. We've leveled that role up. Again, it's being required in LA, but we have branches in San Diego. We have employees in San Diego and Anaheim where it's not mandated yet, but we want to be ahead of it. And our clients are really seeing the value in us wanting to make sure our employees are kept safe. And, we really look at being able to operate as an essential workforce as a privilege that not a lot of industries have, and not losing that privilege because companies not adhering to what protocols are being put into play can have a direct impact on us being changed from essential to non-essential.
No, you're exactly right. And wasn't it like Friday they announced in Los Angeles? So by Monday morning, like these companies had to have something in place that fast. That's fast.
Yes, and it was challenging at first because they just said you need to have an on-site COVID supervisor, and no details of what that role entailed, aside from saying adhere to this guidance. And a lot of the stuff on that guidance is things we were already putting into play: social distancing, desanitizing equipment that touches from one hand to another, or high contact surfaces like counters, those types of things needing to be wiped down and cleaned and sanitized, making sure you're using the correct sanitation products. CDC has a list that says, these are the good ones to kill the virus. You don't want to be disinfecting with the ones that don't. And then, there's no purpose to that. But yes, it was, I actually think it was Thursday night that they rolled it out. And, maybe you're right. Maybe it was Friday, but we started doing our research. What would we create? What would we want this role to entail? And we have a great task force team behind that we're all doing research. We're all, coming up with different items to share with everybody.
No, and I know GoStaff has a big team. And again, it's so cool that you guys are in these different counties, because then it's like, okay, these are the strict rules for LA. I think you're right. I think it's going to be on a state level soon. But you guys are already ahead of the curve. And then talking about, the disinfecting, I know there's, I'd heard some terms being thrown out, like a sanitation technician or sanitation engineer. Like, what are you guys calling the person that's, helping clean and sanitize and disinfect?
So currently, we're calling it a COVID sanitation cleaner. We are only at the level I would say the lower level where there's, no certified exposure, if that makes sense. We're not going into hospitals and cleaning after sick patients. We're more trying to get ahead and preventing the spread. So small example, we work with a lot of general contractors, a lot of home builders. They have subcontractors that need to come in to different homes. So between one subcontractor and the next, there needs to be a disinfecting period, making sure that when one subcontractor leaves the house, let's say it's your drywallers, and now you have your painters coming in, that somebody wipes down whatever the first crew touched to make sure it gets disinfected. So that's where we're currently at that level. We also have a few people that are fulfilling the COVID coordinator. That's what we're calling the COVID supervisor role, because there's a lot to their job description. It's a full day's worth of work, making sure that you're continuously inspecting what's expected, that everybody's participating, that you're taking action. I don't think anybody wants to get sent home from work during these times, but if you're not following by the rules, it's very clear that construction, is enforcing these protocols. Because, like I mentioned earlier, the last thing we want is, for one big job site to really screw things up for the rest of the industry, and we're almost like, worst case scenario, and kind of work yourself back from that. But yeah, that's currently at the level we're servicing for those types of sanitation cleaners.
That's great. And definitely anybody watching this interview, especially the employers, reach out to GoStaff. We have their contact information here on the video in the show notes. And because, if you guys want to see that job description, I'm sure you guys are open to sharing it. Like, hey, here's the job description of everything it entails. Right? You guys are open to that, right?
Yes, we're sharing all the information we're putting out there. Right now, it's a moment to make sure that everybody, knowledge is key, and there's no need to hold that knowledge back from anybody. Whether it provides a benefit to one of our employees, one of our clients, or any other company or person out there, we would see that as a win. Us being able to share what we're pioneering and what we're forefronting to get ahead of this, because we keep on saying, this too shall pass, and being able to adjust and adapt to the situation. I think technology is playing a big key on it. There's a lot of tools, just in retrospect, 10 years ago, how not everybody had an iPhone or a Zoom meeting login, that kind of stuff. So being able to use that technology to stay in contact with each other on a day-to-day basis is essential for us to be able to fulfill this. And we definitely see it as our responsibility. We have people out there working for our clients, and we want to make sure that both of them are being kept safe and taking the necessary precautions to be able to do that. And it is a lot of add-on extra work, and we're doing it with a smile on our face, because that's what we're all about. And that's the outlook. We're trying to stay positive through this challenging time, and I think by us being able to do that, it hopefully rubs off and has the same effect on others.
No, you're right, because it's not just the employers that are, frantically worrying about what do I do, what's going on. It's also these employees and, that are coming on the job sites, and they want to stay safe and healthy. So I think what you guys are implementing is super important. And these are roles that have never existed before in the history of the planet, right? COVID coordinator.
And they might not necessarily disappear,
Yeah.
The closest thing that I can kind of relate this to, and not in a lot of ways, but it would be 9/11. After 9/11, what happened? Security measures were increased across the board. A lot of security measures were put into place that didn't exist before. One of my favorite movies is Home Alone, and I remember when they're running through trying to make sure they don't miss the flight and they don't have to go through a crazy security check. They literally run to the gate and they make the flight, right? We had to adapt. So now, everybody gets screened. So I don't know, once this, all stabilizes, what new sanitation and cleaning protocols are going to be mandated, across the board. I can see how this might, I was, having a little bit of a, I don't know what you call it, a dark thought. And it's, what if all of a sudden we're just going to have to be required to wear masks every time we're outside? And then I started getting creative with my thinking. And I was like, well, at least maybe you can get a mask printed out with what your face looks like, so at least you still look like yourself. But again, I think it went far extreme. But again, I don't know which of these roles might stay. Might become part of day life. When you go, for example, us being a staffing agency, we have all kinds of different applicants and candidates coming through our lobbies. Before, we would just do our regular housekeeping work. We wipe down our counters, we make sure there's a difference between it looking clean and it being disinfected, right? So after this hopefully dies off, what are we going to do? Right now we're currently cleaning. If we're having one person at most, if they're needing our assistance in using one of our computers, because libraries are not open, so some of the public we work with needs that assistance, and us limiting the amount of people, making sure that we're following the protocols we're promoting, making sure that there's social distance between the person and the one in office staff, and just wiping down everything they touch. We have one specific workstation, because we have about 15 workstations for employees or candidates to come in and apply. And right now we're only operating one that's 6 feet away from the person that's greeting them, making sure after they leave, the person desanitizes the station before somebody new comes on. So once everything goes quote unquote back to normal, do we continue to do these things? And I think we're going to hopefully learn a lot when it comes to how these viruses spread and how to protect ourselves, so we don't go through this scenario anytime soon again.
No, Carlos, and you bring up great points, because just today they're saying we might, it's the big hot news today is like we might never shake hands again, right? It's like a fist bump or a bow or something. And again, I don't think this will be the first pandemic, unfortunately. So now I think you're right. It's like, how do we prepare if it happens again? And I think we will be way better prepared. This kind of caught everybody off guard. When you're talking about, actually one question about, people coming in for jobs, has it increased now because so many people lost their job or they're on furlough? Like, are they coming in,
Yes.
getting more applicants?
The inflow of calls has definitely increased. One of my recruiters said it in a way that stuck to me really, really closely. They said, we're attracting people that, had this not been going on, wouldn't have been job seekers at the moment. And we're doing our part to try to, both help our current roster of current employees, and then everybody else that's out there that's looking for work, for hours. I imagine almost everybody personally knows somebody that's been affected and that is struggling because of the industry that they're in. So in a certain way, I feel like I won the lottery by having the job I have, because now more than ever, I feel the need for my role, and I'm happy to fulfill it for myself and for the company. Having been here as long as I have, and haven't seen in anything from the wildfires. I think it was in like 2004. There's been a lot of different things that have hit San Diego, and now just adjusting to the new thing that's part of our daily life now.
No, definitely. And so talking about, like, if we go back on the tech side a little bit, telecommuting, like, have you guys seen, obviously you guys had to implement that, right? You guys have like 60 employees, and it's like, okay, now we're all going to work from home, most of us. What are your thoughts on telecommuting?
The biggest item I'm focusing currently on is productivity, regardless of whether you're working from home or not. I have one of my coworkers that has a phrase that sticks to me, and they always call a spade a spade. So calling, working from home, there's going to be more distractions, whether, you're like me, that you have a 1-year-old and you don't have pets, or you have pets, or you have any other distraction, a big family, other people working from home on top of yourself. it can be challenging, and coming up with a fair way of weighing people's productivity is what we've really been working on. The first part was just the logistical aspect of it, just before, like I said, trying to be ahead of things, right? So before it was mandated, we rolled out a few people to work from home to test it out, create tips and advice, how to set up your workstation. And then right after we developed that, we sent out a survey company-wide to figure out who would actually have the technology to be able to work remotely. From a computer, internet, what type of internet, do you have access to Ethernet? Luckily our phone systems, there's an app that the vendor we use provides, and you are pretty much able to mask your work extension to your cell phone. And it's like you're calling from your desk, you can call it for extensions. But I believe because we went from nobody using it to a lot of people using it, it started having, system issues. So that's the first thing we looked at. It's like, did we put this system on overload? And what other options do we have? This can't be the only option. What if the app fails? Phones are essential, especially right now that we're doing a lot of remote recruiting, which we had experience in the past. So it was just slightly adjusting it to these current times. But from the hiring aspect, there's a lot of add-ons we've created. Just to give you a couple of small examples. As an employer, you're required to make copies of your applicants' IDs for their I-9 purposes, and you need to physically be able to make the copy yourself. So right now, that's challenging. We're getting a lot of people that are uploading their IDs through our portal. It's a safe way to share your IDs with us online. Versus texting somebody a picture of your IDs or something along those lines. It's like, did they just text you their social security number? Like, what's wrong with this person? But yes, so having a good system to notate, we are going to need to backtrack all of these people, and once things stabilize, be able to make the actual copy ourselves versus the copy they're providing. We're fortunate to have been using E-Verify since it rolled out. So on that end, we're covered. Everybody's still getting put through the process of E-Verification. So if anybody is not eligible to work in the US, that system catches that part. So just kind of throwing it out there in case, the fake ID thing pops up. It's difficult for us to be able to say that off a picture somebody sends. So we count on E-Verify to do its thing. And so far we've had no issues with that. The system's working just as it was before.
Nice. No, that's great. And then I know you guys are you guys doing some sort of COVID orientation, like a special orientation for these people you guys are bringing in?
Yes. So we've had, our regular employee orientation. We did a page 2 that's specific to these times. We're actually keeping a log of all these add-ons we've been creating, because from having to double check people's paperwork, there's 4 or 5 new things that I need to check now, or our QC department checks for, to make sure they're there. And then again, having a plan so when this stabilizes, we can remove those extra layers we've had to create to work through this and still have the process work. It has the guide of from social distancing, workforce hygiene, symptoms, what to do if you have symptoms. It's a really good way of making sure our employees are not only aware of what these things are, but then consistently making sure they're cognizant, that reminding them it's not just a one-time thing. We're on top of them, for example, reading all of this through the COVID orientation, that we made sure all of our current staff got a copy of, acknowledged they had received it, and then adding it on to any new staff we're bringing, so we're covered on both fronts. The other part of it is we started doing health checks. Again, similar to what you were saying earlier, one of our clients in one of our branches, I believe it was in LA County, they started having their own on-site health check, and we saw what they were doing. We're like, this is great. Reached out to them, said we want to create something similar. We used theirs as a base. Again, we leveled up. We added a couple of additional things we wanted to make sure we were covering. But every person that we're checking in for their work assignment, a lot of these employees are being scheduled to go directly to the job sites. They're not actually coming to the office. And during the health check call in the morning, we make sure that they're symptom free. We go through a series of questions with everybody and make sure that they're not showing any symptoms, because if they are, they're going to get sent home from the job site. We started doing this, I believe, as of this Monday. And again, it's not required anywhere, but this is a good way for us to make, if my employer was calling me every day saying, hey, you're symptom free before you go to work, I would take it that as a high level of importance that comes with it. And similarly, our clients, knowing that we're doing that for the employees. And if anybody is showing symptoms, making sure that we're directing them to stay home. We've definitely hit those scenarios, and then just following the process that the CDC requests. If somebody does show symptoms, how to tackle that, making sure we share those resources with them, so that the employee also feels supported. It's not just like, oh, well, you have symptoms, go home and figure it out on your own. And no, we're gonna hold your hand through it, as we hold our client's hand through it too. And everybody's been very, very receptive. Nobody's been, or let me rephrase that. We've had a success with people checking in and going through this health check call with us. And a big reason to that is we let them know this is going to happen the day before. So for example, if I'm scheduling you on a job assignment for tomorrow, on top of going over the job description, location, start time, all the details that we usually go through, I end the call by saying, and just a quick reminder, in the morning, we're going to call you with this health check call. That's going to, explaining to them the why behind the call, so that in the morning, they don't ignore the call. They want to participate in it and share that information with us. And then on our end, we're keeping a daily log of all the calls we're making, what people are telling us. And like I mentioned earlier, if anybody is showing symptoms, that we follow that process. And we have had to tell people to stay home. And those conversations can also be challenging because, somebody might think, oh, well, I have a slight fever, but I could still do my job. That's where we're really making sure we're communicating clearly to everybody that we have to follow these guidelines. And if we don't, there's a lot to risk.
No, and again, it's, I know we mentioned it earlier, it's having the empathy for the employees and for the temps and the contractors, the people that are working, because some of them might have to go to work. They need the money, but maybe they're so terrified of getting sick. But I think these health checks are a nice way of saying, wow, you guys actually care. You're doing health checks with everybody. I feel more secure going to the job site or the position. Actually, that was my next question. I know we talked a lot about construction, but what are some other sectors, other industries that are really staffing up right now? Obviously, grocery stores. What are a few of them you guys are working with?
We've been trying to get in with, we've been offering our services. Our sales team has been pushing really hard to expand just out of construction. But unfortunately, there is a lot of industries that are not essential. So, we used to have, for example, a significant, a percentage of our volume was industrial jobs, warehouses, delivery drivers. But if the supplies that they provide are not essential, then they might be currently shut down. So the big thing we've been trying to do is identify the staff that wasn't, that their assignment was pretty much put on hold, and seeing what other skills they have to repurpose, whatever talents, to repurpose them by looking at their talents and seeing what other opportunities we can provide for them, and if they are looking to be out on a job assignment. Regards to the groceries.
And I definitely want to talk about face masks and kind of, the guidelines that you guys are implementing for that. Oh, look. Yeah, I don't have mine next to me. Okay, good. You have yours. But if you don't if you don't want to shave, then you wear your face mask. There, you're totally covered.
So speaking of repurposing, one of our company tends to show appreciation when you hit your decade, when you've been here 10 years. I myself was prized with a company party for honoring me. But the most recent one we had was one of our recruiters, Danny, and we actually made these for his. We had a very family oriented barbecue out in Mission Bay. to think that, that's not even a possibility right now is really sad. But yeah, so we had a great event. We had a great time, and we made these for him. It actually says Dee's 10-year anniversary and then our logo on it. And I've used this before on hikes and other things. And, when this all started happening, I was like, you know what, I could use this for this. And I shared that with everybody, and a lot of people still had theirs. So it's funny because now around the office, you see a few people wearing them, and I know where they got them from.
I love that. That's awesome. So then is there certain types that people need to wear, like specific types at certain job sites?
Right now for the jobs we're staffing, it's any face covering.
Okay, any face covering. Okay.
I believe the proper term for these are called gaiters. I mean, it could be, neck warmer, or, we have a few resources to share for people that want to make their own from home. There literally anything that you can do to, cover your mouth and your nose. You don't, for example, those dust masks, things that have that, that strap, they're difficult to wear nonstop. So what I've been telling people is, if I had to wear this all day, I mean, I prefer not to, but I think this would be a lot better than, something that goes behind my ears and is constantly, pulling on my hair. The one biggest thing, my biggest complaint right now is that my glasses fog up a lot when I wear them, but,
yeah, we're all figuring it out as we go, right? And then, so, I know I really appreciate you doing this interview. It's been super helpful, Carlos. It's been amazing. I know we're going to do another one soon where we're going to go out, that comprehensive guide that GoStaff put together. I know they're putting the final touches on it. You guys have a team of attorneys that, are helping advise through this process, which is nice because then an employer doesn't have to worry about these things up front. So yeah, I mean, definitely our next interview, we're going to go through that guide in detail. Is there any other final, words of advice, encouragement, any tips or tricks before we wrap this interview up?
Yeah, I guess, I would want people to follow suit and just share, but also be cognizant of what you're sharing. We're trying to make sure that the resources we're sharing are from a good source. There's a lot of different information out there. So aside from our employment attorneys, our legal team, and running things that we're thinking of executing before we implement them through them, that task force I was mentioning, we're constantly keeping up with what CDC is rolling out. I've called Cal OSHA a few times already to check in and say, hey, I've got these questions. They've been great. They've been prompt in being able to get me a response. I was kind of surprised. I thought OSHA was going to kind of be like the DMV. They take forever to take care of you. But no, they were on it. They were really good, insightful, pointing me in the right direction to help this task force as we were developing this comprehensive guide. On top of that, we are members of a good amount of associations, from general contractors, builders, that type of association, and we're sharing with them everything, and also looking at what they're sharing. We've been put, how do I say this? They've requested our attendance to certain things and participation in certain things. People, doing not necessarily interviews, but chats about some of the stuff we've been doing, member spotlight kind of thing, which again, we're participating. On top of that, I was on a webinar last night from 7:30 to 8:30 at night, learning about, how to support your staff that's showing signs of worrying through this. How are people adjusting to working remotely? What concerns do they have? There's that side of your mental health, and making sure that we're also not forgetting about that part. So yeah, the comprehensive guide is really good. It's a combination of all the different things we've implemented, that we've rolled out, so our clients, our employees, our friends can get to see what we're doing, so we could share that with them. And I am almost certain it's the comprehensive guide is going to continue to develop. There's going to be more add-ons as we're going through this. The most recent one is what you were mentioning earlier of the COVID coordinator that we're presenting that role to our clients as to make sure that they're providing that safety at their job sites. So yeah.
No, that's great. And, there's so much noise. You bring up a good point because there's so much noise and, all the different associations are putting out stuff. Everybody's putting out stuff. You guys have been in business since 2001. You guys know what you're doing, obviously. I know you guys are using Procopio, which is like one of the best law firms in all of San Diego. So, again, I think it's a trusted source to kind of, you guys putting out, and like you guys have been so gracious putting out this information for everybody to use, not just your current clients.
Yeah, definitely.
So Carlos, thank you so much for doing this interview. I'm sure people got a lot of value out of it and just helping people point in the right direction. Again, the contact information for GoStaff is here in the show notes, and you guys can reach out, ask questions to them. Their team is on hand and ready to help.
Awesome.
Okay, thanks again.
Thank you.